was gone for about a week, and now nobody's sending me questions. I'm gonna try to pull from my brain all the things that I have been thinking about, talking to you guys about. I got a lot of questions from new grads. I actually get questions from people who are going into field work. So if you want to take it all the way back and do like field work placements, I actually here at Hands-On Therapy Services, we take about take one student a year, and normally we take level 2 students. So in our practice, we take level 2 students that they stay with us for 3 months, and one of the things I normally like to do is I like to interview them. And I think of anyone who has known me in the past, be like, oh my God, she was such a because I would scare the hell out of people about the internship. Now, it's not meant to scare. I think I'm much better nowadays about it, but it's not meant to scare people. It's about setting expectations. I want people who are coming in here to know what to expect. Now, before I started Hands-On Therapy Services, I worked at a hospital and I worked in an outpatient setting, and so each setting is different. Before that I worked in acute care, so they're all different types of settings, and so I always like to set expectations about what you're going to walk into, what do we expect from our students, and that kind of stuff. I do it now with my volunteers. You ask any volunteer that comes into Hands-On Therapy Services, I send them videos, I tell them what I expect from them, what it means to be on time, what it means to leave, how to dress. All those things are really, really important. So normally with my field work level students, I do the same thing. I tell them what to expect. When I worked in a very, very busy outpatient clinic where you're seeing multiple patients at any given time, it's a very, very fast-paced type of setting, and so I would tell them, what type of setting, what we expected, and that kind of stuff. Now here in my own clinic, I've kind of set up a clinic where we work at a slower pace, which allows us to be with our patients, our clients, so much more, and give them a lot more time and attention. So then it becomes like so much more about attention to detail and things like that. So normally what I tell my students, and when I see posts like this on in different groups that I'm in, if I have an opportunity, I'll mention it. It's like when you're coming into as a field work as a student, you're not expected to come in knowing everything. You should know the basics. You should know, generally speaking, how do you do an evaluation, how do you do a progress note, and how do you do discharges. That's just basic, right? Like, you learn that stuff in school. You learn how to write a note, you learn how to write goals. Those are basic stuff that you're learning. And then what you're now finally getting to do is you're now getting to apply it in this setting. And in the setting that you're going to come into, like a hand therapy setting, like for example, in my own setting, I teach people how we like to do our evaluations, what kind of questions we ask, how we ask them. And then in a hand placement, you're expected to know a basic anatomy. You should know like fingers and wrists and bones and stuff like that. And basic goniometry skills, testing skills of like grip strength and things like that. Like, I've taught in the university level to a certain extent, and so I know how they're testing for that to a certain extent. And so those are some basic things, and then everything else you're supposed to learn on the site. Like, so every setting deals with different types of injuries. Not differently, deals with different types of injuries. So some people, what if you go to an outpatient center and you get more of a geriatric population? That's going to be different than going to an outpatient center and you're working with an orthopedic hand surgeon. You're going to see tons of different types of hand surgeries. And so it's real important to just go ahead and ask your CI, wherever you're going, what are some basic things that I should be looking up and that I should know. So I usually tell my students that too. Like, here are some basic things. These are the types of injuries that we see. Know your basic anatomy. Know your basic, shoulder muscles, forearm muscles, wrist muscles, hand muscles, that kind of stuff. Like, just real basic. There are therapists with lots of years experience and don't know like nerve innervations and stuff like that. But I would say, just if you know your basics, that's going to set you off really well. And then from there, you would go to your CI and be like, okay, these are the types of injuries that I'm seeing, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to take a look at them. Now, when you're a new grad and you're going into a setting, into a practice like my private setting like myself, or into a hospital setting, or into like a more corporate outpatient setting, they're all like a little bit different, but for the most part, I provide my staff with resources. When I worked in a hospital setting, they also had resources. Even though they were like super old resources, they were still resources. So I remember when I started in acute care, not so much, but when I started in outpatient, I had these resources, rehab of the hand. Now back then it was like, there was like second edition or so, I don't know. But they had some really, really old ones. And just because there's old resources doesn't mean that they're not good resources. They're great resources. And when you're just starting out, they're great resources to just get started with. It's okay. So volume 1 and volume 2, the hand, hopefully wherever you're working as a hand therapist, your employer, maybe your hospital, stuff like that, can get you these kind of resources. They're great if you already know, you want to do hand therapy. Like, I don't want to work anywhere else. I get people who say that to me. I don't want to work anywhere else. I will hold out. I will do nothing but hand therapy. Like, freaking invest. It's really worth it. These, even if, they just upgrade to the 6th edition. So this is a relatively new one, but yeah, they're a little bit expensive, but they do really last. You can use them as a resource. Anytime you run into a case, you can look it up. It's a really good resource for you to have. So if your employer doesn't have it for you, think about investing it. If you're just trying out an outpatient, I think a book that's really great for beginners is the Indiana Protocol book. You just have to look that up. I have mine, but it's super old. It's like falling apart because it's spiral bound. What I heard was that they're coming out with a new edition. So they're really a great resource as well. And you can go into the index and look up like hand, elbow, soft tissue, tendons. And so I really like that protocol book because it's full of protocols. Like, so where rehab of the hand will go over why things are what they are, and more anatomy and stuff like that, and then go into why you're doing what you're doing and some ideas and stuff like that. The protocol book is just a protocol book. So so that might work for some people. And I actually have on our YouTube channel, Hand Therapy Secrets, some details of some books. But normally the rehab of the handbook is, most people who are looking to study for the CHT, they'll invest in it because they like for sure know it's like worth the investment. But I would say those are some really key textbooks. We just got this one. This is from Susan. She's with handtherapy.com, and she does a hand and upper extremity rehab book. It's known as the Purple Book, and it's a quick reference guide and review, but a lot of people tend to use this book as a study guide as well for the CHT, but some people say that they love going there and using it as a resource. But those are some of the like major textbooks in hand therapy. If you're not looking to spend like several $100s in the textbooks themselves, there's a lot of Facebook groups. that you can search up, like hand, forget the names, but there's a lot of different Facebook groups too. We don't have one ourselves, like Hand Therapy Secrets. I just have a YouTube channel, and on our YouTube channel, I'm just constantly just trying to add different types of videos and stuff like that. But on Facebook, there's a ton of like occupational therapy treatment ideas if you're like a new grad getting started, hand therapy treatment ideas, I think. But sometimes with those really, really big groups is that there's a ton of comments and opinions and ideas and stuff like, so it can be really great, but at the same time a lot to weed through. So I would just use that with caution. There's nothing better than taking a course. Like if you're starting out in hand therapy, pick a course. Now picking a course just depends on how much you're looking to invest, how much you're looking to spend, and if you're willing to travel or not. So and whatever area you're in, like are you weakest in hand type of injuries, and you see a ton of hands, and take a hand class. If you find that you're weakest in like manual treatments, like I don't know how to hold this person or where to press, or then you might want to take a manual therapy class. Now that does take a lot of time to just kind of think through and weed through which kind of classes you're interested in. There's so many different companies, and one of the things that I always say is like, you're not trying to be the cheapest therapist. Like nobody's trying to be the cheapest therapist, and nobody's like actively going necessarily and being like, I want to be with the cheapest therapist. You want to be the best therapist, right? So find courses that are the best for you, and not necessarily always pick the courses that are the cheapest. So that's my little thing about CEU courses. But figure out, if in your clinic you see a ton of shoulders. Like, so when I started out, I was seeing tons of shoulders, and so I wanted to make sure that I was more comfortable and stuff like that. So I took a shoulder class, and the shoulder class was something where it went over certain anatomy, went over some hands-on stuff, manual treatments and stuff like that, and different exercises. And so it was a great beginner course. It was a comprehensive manual review or whatever of shoulder. And then I think like a year or two later, wrist kinematics and stuff like that was a little difficult to understand all the different things about wrist injuries. And so then I took a wrist class, and back then I think we were you just take more live courses versus like online classes. Nowadays I think there's a mixture of both, and you're gonna see like probably less live courses, but I don't think so. I think that there's a huge room for live courses. I know I take 1 to 2 a year of live courses, and then I don't know about online courses. Well, I offer online courses, but do I take online courses? That's been a little challenging for me, just because I know myself. Like I've taken a couple of neck courses. Oh my god, they are so dry. So dry. But sometimes I'll take a course that's like 1 day of online prep, and then 2 to 3 days of online classes. Like there was there's some online classes that if the professor or whatever teacher is like more dynamic, then they're definitely worth it. And sometimes it is trial and error of like what you like and what you don't like, but try to find a course that's based on what you want to learn in the setting that you're in. To say like, oh, let me recommend all these courses, it's difficult because everyone's in a different place. And so if you're, when I was in acute care, so what kind of courses would benefit me while I'm in acute care? Because I was seeing wound care, and I was seeing, orthopedic types of injuries. So I tried to find a class I did a wound care class, and I did, I did shoulder class. So I try to think about like 1 to 2 classes a year that I can do. I might find one that's in my town that I like, and then find one where I get to travel. and just, you know, maybe find one that I have a friend living in there, and so it's a great opportunity to travel and visit a friend and then take a class. I actually am taking a class in March, and I had already planned to go see my brother out in the West Coast, so booked my trip, and then I found this class out there. I was like, oh, you know, instead of waiting for it to come to me, like I'm already going to be on that side of the world, let me just take a course, you know, and just extended my stay like over through the weekend, a few, you know, like two extra days. So that's what I would recommend when it comes to classes. Find out exactly what you need for the setting that you're in. And if you're a new grad, I mean, wow, there's so many classes that you can take, and you just gotta pick one. Just, as long as you pick one, then it's going to allow you, kind of get you motivated to get the next one, the next one, the next one. So, but I don't know if there's anything that's like so beginner. I am coming up with the foundations of hand therapy, but even as I'm putting this class together, I'm like, whoa, there are so many different types of injuries. There's, you know, it's going to include like, you know, how we do certain types of evaluations, how we ask questions, how we dive into like finding the problem, dealing with the problem, and I'm contemplating putting some splinting in there too, because there's so many different types of injuries that you sort of have to know like how to take care of them from a splinting perspective. So I mean, it's a lot of information, so it's not easy to just put everything into one package that says like, oh, beginner. So anyway, but that's what I really recommend. If you're in field work, you're still in OT, but you are getting a hand placement, that's where I would start. You know, talk to your CI, you know your basics, and then they'll help you kind of hone in and learn, you know, what you need to do based on the kind of clientele they have. And then if you're a brand new grad, I would say like 1 to 3 years experience or anything like that, just plan it out and take 1 to 2 classes every year based on the type of injuries that you're seeing, but also where your weakest area is, so that you can develop your skills and become an even stronger therapist. And I would encourage anybody who's looking to take classes and stuff like that not to always think of like, how can I take the cheapest classes, because you're not trying to be the cheapest therapist, you're trying to be the best therapist. So look for a course that's going to really fit with the kind of skill levels that you're looking to develop. All right, thank you so much. I will be back next Monday at 4 p.m.